Hey you, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be discussing about pelvic organ prolapse quantification system. I know it is very tough to study during residency, and even after the ward work when we come home, it is very difficult to concentrate because we are so tired. So the purpose of these videos are to let you understand and complete one topic in just 10 minutes. And you lie down on bed to sleep, you can just watch a video of 10 minutes and feel like you have completed one topic. Let's dive in. So the POPQ classification or the pelvic organ prolapse quantification system was given by the International Continence Society in the year 1996. And to learn this, you need to know two basic diagrams. One is this diagram of the grid, which contains 9 boxes. The other diagram includes, this is the anterior abdominal wall, this is the bladder, this is the vagina, then the cervix and the uterus, then here comes the anus and the rectum. So this is a diagram that you need to remember very thoroughly. The first thing we need to know are some salient points, which include that all the measurements are done in centimeters. The reference point is hymen. If you are going proximal to the hymen, it is in negative, and if you are coming distal to the hymen, then it is in positive. This grid has got 9 different points. The first point is AA. Now, considering the vagina has got 4 walls in which the anterior and the posterior wall are opposed to each other. So this is the anterior wall, this is the posterior wall, and it has got 2 lateral walls. So the vagina is actually H-shaped because the anterior and posterior wall is opposed. And the cervix enters, for example, this is the vagina, so the cervix enters inside it. So there are 2 parts of the cervix. One is the supravaginal part that is above the vagina and does not enter it. And the other is the intravaginal part that enters the vagina. So AA is a point on the anterior vaginal wall which is 3 cm proximal to the hymen. Hymen is our reference point. Any point that is 3 cm above the hymen on the anterior vaginal wall is called as AA. Now what is BA? BA is a point that is the most dependent point on the anterior vaginal wall. For example, prolapse is there. So the anterior vaginal wall is going to prolapse outside the vagina. In that case, the most dependent part or the part that has come the maximum out, you have to measure that part from the hymen. So that distance is going to be the BA distance. So in a normal person, when there is no prolapse, this AA is going to be equal to BA because there is no prolapse. In a normal person, AA is -3. So in a normal person, BA will also be -3. But in a person who has got a prolapse, and for example, consider the maximum amount of prolapse. In that also, if this AA point gets prolapsed, AA is a fixed point 3 cm above the hymen. So it will be able to move 3 cm outside the hymen. So the range of AA becomes -3 to +3. But BA is not a fixed point. If there is no prolapse, BA is equal to -3. That is equal to AA. But if there is prolapse, then this BA comes outside the vagina. The maximum dependent part has to be calculated from there. Maximum BA can be if the entire vagina comes outside, that is the total vaginal length is outside. Then the furthest part is the BA part from the hymen. So BA range can be -3 in a normal person to plus TVL in a person who has got the maximum amount of prolapse. Similarly, there are 2 other points on the posterior wall, which is called as the AP and the BP point. In a similar way, in the posterior vaginal wall, AP is a point 3 cm above the hymen and BP is a point that is a maximum dependent point in the posterior vaginal wall. So in a normal person, this BP will be equal to AP because there will be no prolapse. But if prolapse is there, this BP point shifts and it becomes the most dependent part on the posterior vaginal wall. So the range can be -3 in a normal person to plus TVL in a person who has a prolapse. So by now we know 4 points. AA -3 cm normally to plus 3 cm in a prolapsed patient. The range is this. Similarly AP. BP is the maximum prolapsed point in posterior vaginal wall and similarly BA. Now the other 2 points are C and D. C is for cervix or vaginal vault in a hysterectomized patient. Now we already know there is an intravaginal part of the cervix which is inside the vagina. So the vagina is going above the cervix and then attaching to it. So on the anterior part there is the anterior fornix. On the posterior part there is the posterior fornix. And on the lateral parts there are the lateral fornices. These are the 4 fornices. Cervix has come inside the vagina, making the intravaginal part of the cervix. In a normal person, this cervix is around 8 cm above the hymen. So the normal calculation of the cervix becomes -8. If at all there is some apical prolapse and this cervix prolapses down, then this measurements start increasing. It becomes -7, -6. Similarly, it goes to 0 till it reaches the hymen. And if it is coming outside, it becomes positive. And in a hysterectomized patient, the vaginal vault is taken as the C point. Now coming to the D point, this D point denotes the posterior fornix. This was the cervix, the vagina was coming and attaching to the cervix like this. So the posterior fornix, the uppermost part of the posterior fornix is called as D point. But we have to remember that in a hysterectomized patient where the cervix is not there and only vaginal vault is there, that is denoted by C. D point is not there. So in a hysterectomized patient, this D point won't be there if a person has already had hysterectomy in the past. Now coming to the other 3 points. For these other 3 points, we will need this diagram. These 3 points are GH, genital hiatus, PB, perineal body, and TVL, total vaginal length. Suppose this is the perineum, this is the external urethral meatus, this is the posterior fourchette or the midline posterior hymen is here, and this is the anus. We will measure the length between the external urethral meatus and the posterior midline hymen. This length is the genital hiatus. From the posterior midline hymen to the mid-anal point, this part is the perineal body. Last point is the total vaginal length, which we measure from the posterior fornix. So measuring it from here, this is going to be the total vaginal length. So these are the 3 other points that come in the middle segment of this grid. Now we have done all the 9 points: AA, BAC, GH, PB, TVL, and AP, BP, D. In this you measure all the points in the fully strained position, but only TVL is a point which you don't measure while there is a straining. You reduce the entire prolapse and then you measure the TVL. Now coming to the ranges, what will be the range of A? A will be -3 to +3 because it was a specific point on the vaginal wall and you cannot move that point. That part of the vaginal wall will itself come outside. BA is the most dependent part. So from -3 to TVL. C is the cervix. Its normal measurement is -8 cm to TVL. Genital hiatus normal measurement is around 3 to 4 centimeters, perineal body 2 to 3 centimeters, and total vaginal length 10 to 11 centimeters. All the measurements are done in centimeters. AP similar to AA, -3 to +3. BP similar to BA, -3 to TVL. And D point, usually it is -10. In a hysterectomized patient, it is not there also and can also go till TVL. Now we will see how to do the staging. We will write all these measurements in this grid, and after that we will see which wall or which part of the vagina has got maximum prolapse. For example, if the anterior part has got the maximum prolapse, then we will take the part that is maximally outside. Now, stage 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Stage 0 is when there is no prolapse. Everything is at its place. That is, AA is equal to BA and AP is equal to BP. And there is no apical prolapse also. C and D are also in position. Stage 1 prolapse is when there is prolapse, but the prolapsed part is more than 1 centimeter above the hymen. So that means that prolapsed part is less than -2. Stage 2 is when the prolapsed part is between 1 centimeter above to 1 centimeter below the hymen. So this is your reference point, that is the hymen. If it is 1 centimeter above or 1 centimeter below, it is going to be in stage 2. And stage 3 is when the prolapsed part is more than 1 centimeter outside the hymen. And stage 4 is when the entire vagina is outside the hymen. That means the entire TVL is outside. Now let's revise in less than 1 minute. AA is a point that is 3 cm above the hymen on the anterior wall. AP is a point 3 cm above the hymen on the posterior vaginal wall. BA and BP are the most dependent parts of the anterior and posterior vaginal walls, which normally in a normal person are equal to AA and AP respectively. C is a point for cervix, which is usually -8. D is a point which denotes the posterior fornix, which is usually -10 or -11. Then comes GH. GH is the genital hiatus starting from the external urethral meatus to the posterior midline hymen. PB is perineal body from posterior midline hymen to the mid-anal point, and TVL is the total vaginal length, which is the only point that is measured in a non-strained position. That is when the entire prolapse is reduced. This is your POPQ system, and staging is done on the basis of the part that has maximally prolapsed. I hope I was able to explain you in a good manner. Please leave the reviews in the comment section below. If you want me to make any changes, any improvements, just let me know. Also, like and share the video with your friends if you feel it is useful for them also, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.